we're now live.
Thank you very much, Carly. Hello, good afternoon, colleagues. Good afternoon, members. Good afternoon, officers. Thank you for joining us promptly for this afternoon session, where we are digging down on the sustainable economic growth portfolio. Ordinarily, we were having Jonathan to chair this session, but as yet, we can't connect with him, or he cannot connect with us. I'm not quite sure where the challenge lies. So after those few brief words, we obviously, because of timings, we need to push on. Here is Jonathan. Hello, yeah. Jonathan.
Hello. My apologies. My iPad decided to update the moment I came back.
Yes.
About 5 minutes ago.
Absolutely. You have the sympathy of us all. You get the circle of doom just as you want to go into something important. Exactly. Okay, well, I've just a few words of introduction from me, but pleased you're here. Straight away over. But I see that some of the questions early on are from Baroness Taylor, and as yet we haven't seen her. So
okay, we spoke earlier on, and perhaps Ron will initially ask questions on that theme. That's fine. Okay, we'll get underway. Thank you for all attending. Thank you to the officers and to Stephen and to the rest of you that are here. Before we start, though, Stephen, perhaps you would like to talk to us about, briefly, as you know, for a few minutes, about the issues and some of the challenges ahead.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm the Executive Member for Sustainable Economic Growth. I thought it would be helpful to give you a quick introduction to my portfolio area for those who aren't members of the SEG panel. The Growth and Place Service comprises 3 core functions. Firstly, it is the county's statutory planning team, which prepares the minerals and waste plan, determines county planning applications, and takes enforcement action. Secondly, it works with district councils on their local planning and planning applications to help facilitate good growth and to secure planning contributions for Herts County Council services such as highways, education, waste, etc. And thirdly, it has a strategic planning role to engage with other issues happening in and around Hertfordshire, such as joint strategic plans, the London Plan, Luton and Stansted airports, the UK Innovation Corridor, and others. Now, I consider that 23-24 has been pretty successful in terms of growth activity. In 22-23, the county built 4,924 homes, which is about the highest rate in any year since 2001. North Herts and Welwyn Hatfield have adopted their local plans. The planning applications for 10,000 homes at Gilston was approved, subject to legal agreement. We have agreed to create a Harlow-Gilston Joint Committee to guide the long-term growth of that area. Work has progressed on joint strategic plans for the North East and South West of the county. We are working closely with Dacorum and St Albans to develop plans for 10,000 homes and 10,000 jobs at Hemel Garden communities. And we have continued to collect and spend Section 106 contributions on Herts County Council services. We continue to determine planning applications with government timescales. We have played a lead role in opposing the expansion of Luton Airport at the public inquiry, and we have worked with district councils to implement a series of actions to improve planning resilience in terms of staff recruitment and retention. And many of these projects, opportunities and challenges continue into 24-25. The county is planning for at least 100,000 homes and 100,000 jobs over the next 10 to 15 years, and Herts County Council will need to be involved to ensure there are highways and infrastructure solutions. We want to play a key role in large strategic sites such as Harlow-Gilston and Hemel Garden communities, and sites where Herts County Council has land interests such as Brookfield and Baldock. And we want to help to deliver Herts Growth Board vision and missions, notably to those related to housing and the economy. And finally, we want to progress the minerals and waste local plan as soon as possible. I certainly look forward to working with political and officer colleagues on this ambitious agenda. And perhaps, Mark, you would just like to add a few words to that.
Thank you, Stephen. And Chair, if that's okay, good afternoon. I'm the new Executive Director for Growth and Environment. I say new I've been here since the end of October, so I'm probably almost at the end of being able to claim to be the newbie. I'm really delighted to be here. I'm very enthused by the growth agenda that we have here in Hertfordshire. We're seeking to, as Stephen, the Cabinet members just outlined, tackle the housing crisis, do so in a really sustainable way, create new jobs, support the economy to grow, ensure that we're aligning skills training with those jobs, and to improve the socio-economic performance of all of our communities across Hertfordshire. It's already clear to me after 3 months in the role that the executive member and the officer team have long established and very successful working relationships with district councils in particular, but also a range of other partners. The visions and the missions that are being agreed by the Hertfordshire Growth Board, that we may well hear more about, I think will enable us to more easily progress onto some of the implementation through the kind of clear goals and actions that we'll take across the whole system. And then just finally, a couple of points on the budget. I think that the budget that we have set out through the IP, both kind of core budget and funds available in the growth pot, will enable us to deliver our objectives. But of course, there are some strategic risks that we're facing, and we'll continue to keep a close eye on those. So just a few of them, for example, changes to the planning system, to the infrastructure funding regime that are coming, and of course, the economic climate that has changed significantly over the last few years, and I think there's continued uncertainty throughout the year ahead. And then, of course, it's the team. So there are absolutely some recruitment challenges in parts of the team that we need to keep a very close eye on and do what we can to make sure that we are solving. So I hope that's helpful, and I look forward to the discussion
Mark,
today.
Thank you very much indeed. And do feel free, you, Colin, whoever, to chip in as and when. We'll start off, in fact, on the subject of recruitment and staff, and we'll get Ron Tyndall to ask our first question.
Thank you, Chair. Given the recruitment freeze and the lack of budget for recruitment, how is the portfolio holder addressing recruitment and retention of staff?
Well, Colin will tell us more about this, but recruitment of staff is essential, and planning staff particularly are in short supply. Not everybody wants to be a planner, which they should be, because it's a great career for people and gives you the opportunity to be involved in some really interesting work. But we have with the other boroughs and districts put together ideas of how we will deal with this. There is a bit of a merry-go-round, of course, between the boroughs and districts and counties. People move round, but it is something we are actively addressing now. Colin, do you want to say some more on that?
Yeah, thank you very much, Stephen. Thank you for the question. Hopefully, first of all, we're making it a nice place to work and an interesting place to work. Lots of different projects that you heard about, so people do want to come here. We created a couple of new posts last year, strategic planners to work on Harlow and Gilston and Hemel, given their size. As Stephen's just said, we have the Planning Resilience Project operating across Hertfordshire with the districts, with developers, and with academia as well, so the university and the colleges. And we've run a number of things. We're going to careers fairs to promote the place sector, all the different bits of planning and beyond. We're looking at apprenticeships, careers development. There's a mentoring process, so we're aligning mentors and mentees across the county. We had an annual symposium, got well over 100 planners to that, and looking at other shared services. So that rescues all of us and keeps it, try and keep it within the Hertfordshire family. Within my team, we've got lots of planners doing lots of different things. So I do have the ability to redistribute staff if I need to, if there are priority projects. Hope we won't come to that. But it remains an ongoing risk, I think, is the answer. It's on our risk register because, we maintain a small vacancy rate, tolerable at the moment, but we would have to look carefully if that got worse. But, we think with the numbers we've got, we could redistribute and make sure we're doing the priority statutory important tasks.
Given, if I may, a supplementary, given the push to turn technical colleges into universities in the late 90s, and then subsequently government thrust towards academia by creating academies, which tended to concentrate the education system on the academic careers and qualifications, which meant that a lot of specialisms that are used in local government actually fell by the wayside. Can you perhaps give a bit more detail on what you're doing with the University of Hertfordshire and the two colleges, West Herts College and Oaklands and other such colleges, to really push to develop skills, to develop training, to develop the types of careers that we need?
Absolutely. Yeah, we're working with them firstly so we can push working in local government and working in the place sector as something for people, students to consider. You know, they will often do geography and English and many other subjects, science that are related to planning and place, ecology, archaeology, etc. We're then looking at how we can organise the studying they do and the work they do. So perhaps there are apprenticeships where they can study and work at the same time. We will often pay for people to progress their studies. And we're also looking at where we can take people perhaps with aligned skills. So they're not necessarily planners, but they've done geography, they've done environmental sciences, and therefore we can develop their skills within. So a variety of projects, and we keep that conversation going to see what other ideas we can come up with.
Thank you. And sorry,
right.
Can I just
very
raise
briefly,
a particular
Ron,
budget question, which is, how aware are you that obviously having to rely on agency staff actually costs us considerably more money than recruiting staff ourselves? And are you keeping a very close eye on that, and how are we addressing it?
We, as far as I'm aware, don't have many, if any, agency staff in the planning service at the moment. So we have avoided that because of the known costs. So we would prefer to look at how we distribute people, how we decide which tasks to prioritise, or bring in agency staff, consultancies for very short, precise periods of time to work on discrete projects, rather than beginning to rely on them as a general operation of the service.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Mark, you wanted to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Just to add a couple of things that actually came up in one of this morning's scrutiny sessions, but conscious that quite a lot of colleagues weren't there. So I think absolutely back everything Colin said, and he's doing a lot of actually really innovative work, I think, across the planning system, which is great to see. But of course, also it's about what we're doing across HCC to make this a really good place to work. So making sure we've got, for example, really good policies on flexible working, etc., because actually some of those benefits that will help retain people in the public sector when we will never be able to compete with the private sector on pay. So making sure we're doing some of those things that make HCC as a whole a great place to work. And then just picking up on Councillor Tyndall's point, the transfer of the local enterprise partnership to the county from the 1st of April, I think gives us a really good opportunity to do a bit more on bringing some of those skills things together, and particularly reaching back into careers advice into schools, because they already do a lot of that in the LEP. They will remain kind of semi-autonomous. That's absolutely part of the plan, but it also gives us an opportunity to look at some of those public sector kind of shortage areas and build that in the future. So watch this space, I think, on that one.
I think it's also true to say, Jonathan, that the boroughs and districts do a certain amount themselves, which all add to what we do in Hertfordshire. And Steve, you could probably tell us a bit about what's happening in Broxbourne.
Briefly, Steve, please.
Yeah, okay, very quickly. Just briefly, we do an annual event at the Spotlight called Generation Broxbourne, and that is a kind of a careers fair which is aimed at senior school leavers to highlight the various different careers across the Borough of Broxbourne and Herts County Council. But we also invite sort of a whole range of exhibitors, you know, for the fire service there, etc. But Herts County Council and Broxbourne are there, and we've picked up 2 excellent planning officers junior planning officers from there last year. So that's something that's really successful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, because I know recruitment of staff is quite an important aspect, not just for this portfolio, but right across the board. Let's move on to Harlow Gilston Garden Town project. Now, I know that the 5 councils have been involved with this, because we've got the 2 county councils and 3 district councils. 10,000 homes have been proposed to actually be built there. Gilston, for those that don't know, is in East Hertfordshire. What are the risks associated with the Harlow Gilston Garden Town project? Because although it appears to be moving forward and you set up this joint committee, presumably, you know, we have to check on that this big project is managed well.
We certainly do, and the joint committee is part of what will make that happen. One of the things is, of course, you have local planning authorities, which are not Hertfordshire for this particular. So you've got East Herts, for example, for Gilston, and some of the negotiations which go on, for example, over Section 106 and affordable housing are carried out by the local authorities rather than Hertfordshire County Council. But I think we have a big input into this. I know the officers have been working very extensively on it over the last few years. Certainly at council level, we've been very active as well. But Colin, do you want to say some more about what you've been doing? And of course, the HIG money as well, which we are managing. And so far, everything is working out satisfactorily. Obviously, bumps in the road, but it's going okay.
Yeah, I think that's a fair summary. There's a lot of actors when you add the 5 councils together with multiple developers and all of the other partners, statutory, local, you know, public, that are interested in this project. We're building very good relationships at officer level and doing the same at councillor level, so we can all work together with the developers, recognising we have statutory roles in terms of dealing with planning applications and Section 106, but behind the scenes we're trying to build, you know, good working relationships with them. The same with Homes England for the £171 million of HIG money. But undoubtedly, it's a complex project. There are lots of moving parts all the time that sometimes rub up against each other. So a lot of it falls down to relationships, making those phone calls at the right moment to talk to one another, to ease tensions. And the reason for creating the joint committee is so we can do that thoroughly and formally, and to an element in the public domain, to demonstrate to everyone that we're making the right decisions on behalf of these developments, future residents, future businesses, and the wider regeneration of Harlow and surrounds. But I think it's going well at the moment. We're close, I hope, to finalising the Gilston planning applications. We're working on some of the other urban extensions around Harlow, and then we've got some really interesting projects about modal transition to get people out of their cars, the economic growth of the area, and the stewardship of all the public land that will come with these developments as well, to really make them in the interests of the people that are going to live there.
And that's going to be quite important, isn't it, the stewardship, because that's really where we check on that it is a development that you can say, oh, actually, that's quite nice. That's important.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's the role that land may serve in terms of dealing with flooding or biodiversity net gain. There's the role it will play in terms of people enjoying it, you know, walking their dogs, playing sport, all sorts of other things, and the community facilities. And one of the wider questions we've got, whether that can become a more self-sustaining idea, that commercial activities then help to fund maintenance of some of the other green spaces that will be provided.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Steve, you want to come in?
Yes, I think the important thing here is that our input is such so that in years to come, people can say that actually went pretty well. What we're left with is a set of decent developments, nice places to live, good open space, and good connectivity. I think if we can leave, when it's finished, if we can leave the development in that situation without input, then I think we'll have done well.
Fiona.
Thank you. My main question relates to finance and what guarantees are there that there's a realistic amount of money for the lifespan of the project, and also that given that much of the project is in Essex, can we be sure that we're maximising the benefit to Hertfordshire residents?
I think a lot of it is in Hertfordshire. Gilston of 10,000 houses and more in the future. They're all in Hertfordshire. So we have to get it right. We are not putting in a great deal of money into this as Hertfordshire. We're putting in money, certainly in managing the HIG, but we're putting in sufficient to keep our involvement in the Joint Committee, but obviously not funding as such the development, which is mostly commercially funded. I think we've got enough money for the future. Obviously, we will have to assess this on a year-by-year basis as we do the IP each year. But for the moment, we feel relatively comfortable with it.
Thank you.
Fiona's point, though, about the Essex bit, although, yes, the 10,000 homes will be in Gilston in Hertfordshire, there is, of course, a regeneration of Harlow that's taking.
Of the whole thing, yes, there is.
Are we involved in that, or do we just?
Yes. No, we're involved in that. The Joint Committee will be looking at the whole of the development of Harlow, and we're involved in transport, looking at transport for the whole of the Harlow area when it's completed. So yes, we have an involvement in the whole.
And we haven't touched upon Baldock. I don't know, Fiona, is there anything you want to ask about Baldock or the other developments?
Just how the sites are helping to deliver extra homes, jobs and services within Hertfordshire.
Baldock is at an early stage. We are in negotiations with people to develop this. It will be a very interesting site once it is completed. We're going along at a steady pace on that. It's not fast. Decisions won't be taken probably till 2025, but it is going on. I think, Colin, that's probably as much we can say on that, because it is a work in progress.
And I think the reassuring point is we're trying to build sustainable communities in the sense there are homes and jobs and facilities and people can go from one to the other easily. We're not just building dormitory estates and walking away at that point. There'll be jobs, there'll be schools, there'll be all the things that we would expect to see. So the master planning work we're doing is making sure that people can be reassured by that point.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's move on to the expansion of Luton Airport, and we'll start off with Sarah Talon. Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. My first question is, I understand that Luton Borough Council through Luton Rising are outpacing us in terms of legal expertise 2-1. So I'm seeking reassurance that our council's opposition to the Luton Airport expansion is robust and financially sustainable. Is the growth reserve being used to fund consultants and barristers sufficiently adequate to oppose the proposed expansion? And could these funds be used for more pressing concerns?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that a lot of people would like to say, "Yah-boo" to Luton, we don't like it, you'll stop it immediately, it's not going to happen. Unfortunately, when you start on this process, you have to look at things on a legal bit-by-bit process and a technical response. So you pick out the technical bits of the expansion and what we think is wrong with each of the technical parts. That's what we've been doing. It has been a slow progress, but it has been a detailed and a professional process in which we've been involved. And I think we have enough money to complete what we're doing. We're getting towards the end of the hearings now, and I think our approach has been right. I know some people would have liked us to be more, you might say, vigorous, but I don't think the outcome will depend on that. The outcome depends on the proper technical response to each of the individual parts of the inquiry, and I think that's where we are. Colin, would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've had a long running strategy devised with our legal support and with consultants, and we've been seeing that out in advance of the inquiry and during, and we will keep an eye on that after the inquiry as the inspectors go away and consider and then report to the Secretary of State.
Sarah, you okay with that for now?
I think just as a supplementary, just a small, what technical parts in particular are we sort of massively opposing here? It'd be helpful to have a bit more detail on that.
A number of things, a long list, but in summary, the environmental impacts of this development, particularly the carbon and the noise and the pollution from the aviation activities, and then the congestion and the impact on the highway network and the access network to the airport, and how it's of benefit to Hertfordshire or detrimental to Hertfordshire. So they're the core things we're looking at. And we're simultaneously opposing, but we're also within that seeking as many mitigations and benefits as we can for Hertfordshire if the project is approved, and the ability to work with the airport if something does get approved by the Secretary of State, so we can ensure that Hertfordshire gets the best outcome.
Terry Home. Terry.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I live actually on the flight path into Luton. One of the major concerns we'll have, and it probably is not this portfolio, but certainly one of the concerns we have around Luton Airport is access from east to west. Now, wonderful things have been done as far as the M1 is concerned, and as far as the over-the-top train, mini train, yes, I can't think of his name now, that goes in there, but nothing's happening from east to west. Of course, we have to drive through an industrial estate, through a factory that builds cars to get there. That's the only way to get in. Yeah? So probably at the end of the day, we may well be asking for a bypass around Hitchin to get in there. Bearing in mind that, of course, the runway at Luton finishes in Hertfordshire. It's exactly on the Hertfordshire border, the end of the runway. So no extension of runways, because it actually is a very great big valley there. But the principle being is that they get off the runway, they do come into Hertfordshire if they're going eastbound. But the concerns that the residents have, particularly in Hitchin, is access. And so please keep that high on the agenda. Access from east to west is yes, I'm not talking about noise pollution. Somebody else can do all that sort of thing. I use Luton Airport once, maybe twice a year to go to sunnier climes, but that doesn't mean to say that increasing the capacity will not have a detrimental impact on me or the residents I represent. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Adrian, did you have a query you wanted to put about Luton Airport?
Thank you, Jonathan. Mindful of time, I will I'll defer on that.
No, that's fine. Thank you very much. Let's go to the Minerals and Waste Local Plan. Oh, Sarah, sorry, did you want to come back in just before we do that?
I did have a second question, but only if there's time.
Go on. Yeah. Well, if we can get a brief question and a brief answer, that'd be great.
It sort of just leads into what Colin mentioned. It's good to hear about the fact that mitigating impact has been brought up. As my second question is about sort of how we're going to be seeking to do that. For instance, the Lower Luton Road is going to be the main artery for those coming from Hertfordshire, probably not the M1. So what initiatives are we doing with that? Are we seeking any partnerships? And obviously the noise pollution is a major issue for Albans and London Coney. I don't like to affect our residents' peace and quality of life. It'd be good to hear a bit more about that. Thank you.
In theory, with
Thanks, I got a bit of feedback there. Yeah, so as I said, we're working and looking at mitigation. So one of the examples might be if permission is granted, and bear in mind that's the Secretary of State that will ultimately make that choice. But if it does, there may well be a large pot of funding put aside so that if local roads experience congestion, we can use that money to make improvements. So not what we want at the moment, we would rather see this resisted entirely, but it's those sort of things we're also seeking to make sure that we can resolve any issues that arise. But particularly within the planning debate, we want to make sure, firstly, we're arguing against and setting out why it's inappropriate, why it has too much impact. But if we're not successful with that activity, then there are lots of mitigations and limits and planning conditions within any potential approval to make sure that Hertfordshire isn't adversely affected.
Thank you very much, Colin. Thank you, Sarah, for your question. We'll move to minerals and waste local plan, and Ben Crystal.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, my question is, how will the portfolio be addressing the risk of delays to the progress of the minerals and waste local plan?
In as much as we've had a refusal, do you mean for the last? Yes. Okay. Well, as you know, the planning committee refused the last planning application for the minerals working at the Hatfield aerodrome site. Officers anticipate decisions will be appealed, although we have not actually heard about that yet, as far as I know. We will delay the minerals plan until we know about that. Officers apparently believe that the 7-year mineral land supply will fall below that required, but anticipate it will take time for operations to submit any speculative planning applications. So I think we're in a slight limbo situation at the moment until we know the outcome of that appeal, if it's going to happen. And I think we will need to look at the minerals plan once we know that. I think it'd be premature to do so at the moment, but certainly once we know, then we will get on with it.
And to reassure councillor, my officers are doing some background work on other potential sites, depending what happens. We also do an annual monitoring of how much we are extracting from active sites so that we know we have as much supply as possible to accord with that 7-year supply rule.
Great.
Okay,
thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll go on now to opportunities for sustainable growth, and Adrian England.
Thank you, Jonathan. Given the on page 198, the growth and infrastructure budget is being cut by about 15%, or 270k, before rebounding part way to still a cash cut of about 4% or more in real terms. What is the portfolio doing to ensure that the most is made of the opportunities, and how are new opportunities to influence sustainable growth being created?
Okay, I'll pass that straight on to Colin, I think. But there's plenty going on at the moment, and we don't feel that cut, although it is unfortunate but necessary, we don't feel that cut will affect the work we're doing on sustainable growth.
No, I think the overall point is we still have planning officers in the room doing the task that Stephen listed at the beginning, working with districts on their local plans and all the policies and the sites in there. We're just about to prepare a service design guide that sets out what we want in terms of schools and other facilities to make sure those schemes are sustainable. And an infrastructure prospectus is a piece of work we're looking at for the long term. We're about to bring a development quality charter to the panel meeting at the end of this month to go for more sustainable, better designed projects. We're working on the local transport plan, on a local nature recovery strategy. So all of the building blocks of creating good growth and sustainable growth and economic growth, as we'll come on to in a minute, those things are all happening. So I'm reassured we can carry on putting people in the room to do that good work. We will just have to be a bit more careful with where we do spend extra money to make sure we are getting good bang for our buck on that involvement in other strategic projects and partnerships.
Okay, if I may, Jonathan, very quickly. So I hear that you're still going to have people in the room, but on page 195, there's a statement securing budget resilience and resourcing in significantly higher rates of development patterns, and certainly on much larger sites than Hertfordshire's experienced for more than 30 years. So it looks as if we're contemplating having to do more than we've ever done before, but we're also contemplating the biggest budget cuts we've done since 2010. So, but you seem to be confident that that is consistent. Is that right?
I think partly the answer is because some of the sites that are going to deliver these numbers are large strategic sites, we have got resource directed at that. I pointed out earlier we employed 2 new people to work on Harlow and Hemel. They are 20,000 houses. It's much easier to be involved in those at that scale than if they were distributed over, you know, a number of sites at 500 each. So that makes it easier to secure the infrastructure and ensure that our budget can balance in doing that work.
Thank you, Colin. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thanks very much, Adrian. The next section is on job creation. Andrew Williams can't be here this afternoon, so I'll ask what he was probably going to be asking anyway. We're talking about 100,000 jobs, I think, and 100,000 homes in 15 years. What industries are being developed, and what kind of jobs will this really create?
Yeah, okay. Well, you know, Herts LEP monitor the county's economic performance. They have recognised and supported key sectors such as bioscience, screen industries and advanced engineering, and they've appointed sector leads to work with businesses and prepare action plans to evolve these sectors. Herts LEP seeking to align local skills and training to the growth sectors. And Herts LEP is also seeking to expand high-speed broadband to all parts of the county. Gunnelswood Master Plans looking at opportunities to further develop bioscience and advanced engineering opportunities, and Maylands Master Plan looking at opportunities to regenerate existing employment areas and attract investment in Herts IQ. So there's a lot going on, and I think we are getting to the situation where the jobs will follow the homes, and we're confident that that's going to happen.
Well, the IQ, of course, is the Hemel Hempstead area, isn't it? So I don't know if Ron wanted to speak about that, but Ron Tyndall, you got a question?
Yeah, it's Hemel and goes to Rothampstead and so on.
Oh, right, yeah. Ron, you're muted.
Right, sorry, you have targets of 100,000 homes and 100,000 jobs. And clearly the jobs will need to be mixed, a variety of uses and things like that. Could you please say of the 100,000 homes, what is your ambition in terms of affordability and also social housing, and how may that affect the budget? Or will there be a budget going forward? Will there be an intention to make allowance for that within the budget?
I think that's affordability of housing falls to the planning authorities rather than Herts County Council. We do have obviously a wish that we maximise the amount of affordable housing and social housing, but I don't think, and Colin will correct me if I'm wrong in this, I don't think that's going to be in our gift. So allowing budgetary money for that, I don't think is appropriate.
No, the percentage sought on development is set by the district through their local plan. They lead the negotiations on that with the developer, with the applicant. We obviously play a role because we're also asking for contributions. If there are viability issues with the scheme, then we all have to engage in a negotiation on that. The Growth Board has just agreed a housing mission that includes an aspiration to increase the supply of social affordable housing of all categories within that overarching definition. So we'll be looking at that. And in an economic context, it's important to make sure we've got the balance of homes so that we have a balance of residents working in all sorts of sectors and contributing to wider society. So definitely a strategic interest and aspiration for Hertfordshire, but difficult for us to lead on that. We will have to be a partner with our district colleagues.
Thank you. And probably a question like yours.
Supportive, I hope.
Yeah, your question, Ron, might be more for a panel than for this, but it's still relevant. So thank you very much indeed for that. I mean, I was going to ask about really training residents in Hertfordshire to meet the needs of these industries. You sort of answered some of that at the beginning with Ron's first question, unless there's anything you want to add on that.
I think with the LEP coming into the county, we will be working very closely with them. They do a lot on business support, they do a lot on skills. There's real potential to align the things that the county already does on skills and the things that the LEP do with other partners, both public and private, within the county to really achieve as much as possible and make sure that the sectors that we have at the moment have people coming into them with the right skills, and the sectors that we may see in the future have the right people with skills, and aligning aspiration locally and you know what people learn at school, what they go on to do in the colleges and universities, align with the job opportunities we have in Hertfordshire.
Mark, do you want to come in?
Just a quick one to add to that. Of course, colleagues will be aware that the government has invited Hertfordshire, along with other county areas, to express interest in a level 2 devolution deal. One of the elements in that is a greater role on kind of coordinating skills provision across the county, particularly working with the Chamber on the local skills improvement plan. So there isn't a huge amount to update on that. There isn't much detail from central government yet. We're in discussions with officials from government on it, but as and when there is more information, obviously Richard, Stephen will let colleagues know. But that would be a very helpful extra power for us in Hertfordshire to kind of corral skills provision more effectively for the needs of local business and residents.
Whilst we're talking about the LEP, let's move on to economic growth. And Terry Ho. Terry, you're muted.
Myself, there we are. That's better, isn't it? Yeah. I think we're talking the LEP here, weren't we, in particular, because the LEP was a key player. And now that the LEP is now totally controlled by Herts County Council, or led by Herts County Council, the impact of that, and will we be expected to, how shall I say, financially improve or increase the amount of money we're putting into the LEP, or do we see that it's an opportunity for us to expand the LEP and therefore perhaps expand what we'd like to do in Hertfordshire?
I think the key here is that the LEP, as far as I see, will not be totally under control of Herts County Council, because it needs to be fairly autonomous in as much as it's, you know, the work in which it's doing. I think Herts Growth Board has agreed a new economic mission, and incorporation of the LEP creates opportunity to coordinate all of Herts County Council's strategic growth activity, notably joint strategic plans, local transport plan, local nature recovery strategy, economic vision, etc., etc. Herts County Council wants a bigger role in informing local plans about the best locations for housing, employment growth, potentially linked to future sustainable transport services such as the HARP, bus and rapid transport projects. So, you know, the LEP and the Growth Board and Herts County Council have this opportunity to do things in I hesitate to say better, because I think they're doing a fine job anyway, but even better than was being carried out before.
Thank you.
Thanks very much indeed, Terry. And let's then move to the interests of Hertfordshire, which is fairly wide. Ron, you've got a question.
Thank you. Stephen, given the list of interests that are listed on page 194 of the IP, and how would you identify the priorities in that list, and how do you intend to match them with the growth area for Hertfordshire in such a way to maximise economic growth?
Okay, well, I mean, Hertfordshire is an important place to live, and I've said for a long time it needs to be a place that people want to live in and can enjoy living in. So social economic prosperity is the key. We want sustainability going forward. Now, the growth agenda for Herts is set mostly by the local plans, and in the last 10 to 15 years has focused on brownfield land and small, medium urban extensions around existing towns. This is obviously going to change with larger developments of Harlow, Gilston and Hemel Garden communities where we have the opportunity for input. Joint strategic plans will consider a variety of growth options, including possibility of new settlements, something which I'm particularly keen on. So I think the priority that I would have for the interests of Hertfordshire are a county which is affordable as much as it can be, that is attractive, that has very good economic prospects and very good prospects on, if you like, the green agenda. So we're building sustainable housing, our travel becomes sustainable, we have very clean air and so on. So I have personally a big list, not everything that I will have control over, but I think it's important on where we want to be.
Thank you. And given the time factors, Jonathan, we've got a few. I wonder if perhaps Stephen might want to get to elaborate and how he sees within the budget restrictions we have for the next few years, the growth or the ability to improve the east-west connectivity, which is perhaps one of the major problems with actually joining up the various generators of Hertfordshire.
It is. The east-west connectivity is a problem. The A414 is blocked around a number of areas, St Albans and Hertford in particular. The Hert will solve a lot of these problems eventually. It's an expensive solution, but it will eventually be constructed, we think. And I understand that the route of the Hert may be published within the next year, which would be helpful to developers and people carrying out strategic thinking on the Hert. As for roads, if our local transport plan works out, then road use should be reduced. We're looking at green travel, we're looking at active travel, and if we can just get 10% of the current car users off the road, that will help with our connectivity. But it is a long-term problem. It's not easily dealt with, but I think we're getting towards more information on the Hert, which is a very important aspect of it.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Yes, I mean, we heard about the problems from when Terry asked a question about Luton Airport and the east-west connection as well. Adrian England.
Yeah, thank you. Just in relation to the particular interests of Hertfordshire, Hertfordshire is one of a number of counties that sit on the edge of the enormous economic engine, which is London, and that certainly poses particular challenges to districts that, frankly, the nearer they are. How do you see the context of this budget being equipped to deal with that particular challenge that we have, the sort of cascade of relative wealth that can come out of London and overwhelm the supply and demand equation?
Well, that is a problem. It's a particular problem for housing. I mean, Hertfordshire is a wealthy county. We are one of the top contributors to the national exchequer. House prices are affected by London house prices, and for a long time, commuting to London from Hertfordshire was until COVID, it was very substantial. That's becoming less. Having said that, for example, I know that in my own borough in Welwyn Hatfield, more people commute into Welwyn Hatfield each day than commute out of Welwyn Hatfield. So there's movement all around. It is difficult to set Hertfordshire aside from the effects of Greater London. I think the house building that we're going to do will have an effect on that. It will make housing more affordable, simply because if you put 100,000 houses into a population that has got we've got about 400,000 houses now, it will make a difference. It'll make a difference to price house price growth. I'm not saying that it will cause existing house prices to go down. I think that's some of the inspectors might think that. It's not really one of the things that I expect, but I think developing growth itself within Hertfordshire will help, and the sort of work that's going on, for example, around Stevenage now, and will go on around Hemel and Harlow, will lead to centres of growth in themselves, and will require less commuting, and therefore I think less pull from London. And as more large operators like Google, for example, into Broxbourne, don't feel the need to be in the very centre, I think that will help the economy, and I think it will drive up the economy. I'm not saying that everything will become more economic because of that, but it'll drive up the economy and drive up the wealth of the county.
Adrian, you're okay with that?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I hope you're fine with that.
Just to add, Councillor, the London plan is updated on a frequency, so obviously we will look very carefully at what's being thought about there, whether they are looking beyond their boundaries for housing, economic opportunities, how it aligns with London's fortunes, and then we engage on, more parochial things, little things such as we oppose the deletion of the travel card, for example, so that people can still travel into London. We still get the benefits of London, as well as the what threats it may present in terms of the growth agenda to Hertfordshire. So just to reassure, we have a close eye on and we react and interact as we need to.
As you're not one of the big spending portfolios like adult care and health or highways, do you sometimes feel that you're doing the work you're doing with sort of one arm behind your back, or are you able to cope?
I don't feel that we're doing the work with one arm behind our back. I've used the phrase before, we are small but mighty, which I think is true. And I think with the staffing we have and the budget we have, I think the officers carry out a huge amount of work. Do you feel, Colin, that you have one arm behind your back?
No, certainly not in terms of budget. If there were more ability for the county to do things, there are opportunities there, but we work very closely with districts and with developers, and the planning system is a system. It has lots of actors, and we have to work out how to get the best out of that system for all of us. So yeah, within the operation of it, I think we're doing a very good job, and we're securing the benefits we want for Hertfordshire, and where we need to, the things we need to on behalf of the county council and its own statutory functions and its wider service interests.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from councillors at all? No, if not, then I think we finished a few minutes early by the looks of things. So what we'll be doing is reconvening. I know not everybody can come, but we'll be reconvening, I think probably including you, Stephen, possibly at 3:30, when we'll talk about potential recommendations. So thank you all for coming along, and speak to you at 3:30.
See you later. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
We're live, everyone.
Thank you, Carly. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this, the final evidence gathering session of this particular round of the review of the IP. This for this and the forthcoming years. Just a quick thank you to officers and members for joining us today, and look forward to a lively session. Everybody else has kept to time, so Bob, as you're chairing, I hope that you can keep up the sorry, not Bob, chairing, Stella. I'm looking at Bob in the top left-hand corner there. He was winking.
Everyone looks at Bob, David.
Yeah, I know, it's sad. I'm on the medication. I'll get better. But Stella, welcome to you and all your colleagues there. Good luck. Just a quick reminder, I will be reminding you at the end as well that we'll be joining back again at 3:30 to go through the recommendations. So Stella, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, David. And welcome to everyone here this afternoon for the last but not least of our evidence gathering sessions for this 2024 IP. I'm not going to waste time. I'm going to hand straight over to our executive member, Councillor Bob Deering, to give us an update on the priorities within the Directorate at the moment and the challenges that are faced by our officers.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Stella. Can I just say up front that it's very good to see everybody here, and if there are members of the public watching, really grateful to you for doing that. This is all part of the democratic process. So your engagement out there is really important, and we appreciate it. Next thing to say is that, as some of you on the call know, I've had a bit of ill health recently, so I'm a bit coughy and spluttery, but you'll just have to put up with that. And the third thing to say is that we're very mindful that we don't have very much time. We know that you've identified some questions already, so we're going to try and keep moving as quickly as we can. So in answer to your question, Stella, I think I would say that in our portfolio, we see the challenge as essentially being that we must do our part to make sure that the County Council operates as effectively as it possibly can, that all the service departments provide the services that they wish to provide to the best of their ability. And at the same time, we do our bit towards making sure that the budget balances and that issues such as headcount and some of the things that are raised in the lines of inquiry work as well as they possibly can. We're a big organisation. We're budgeted to spend about £1.1 billion this year on spending. We've got round figures, about 8,000 staff. So it's a big organisation, and it lives and it flexes, it breathes, and we have to make sure it keeps moving in the right direction so that we can support all the departments.
Thank you very much, Bob. Thank you for that. We're going to go straight in, as you said, to the questions. And I want to introduce Councillor Tim Williams. And Tim has a pertinent question to ask. Tim, over to you when you're ready.
Thank you very much, Stella, and thank you very much, Bob. Yeah, as you mentioned there, Herts County Council is a very large organisation. There's no doubts of it. It does spend a lot of money sort of basically trying to improve IT, advancement in technology, also trying to always look at service improvements and all that. But how much thoroughly has the council actually evaluated the accessibility of these services to not only to the staff members involved, but also to the actual community and the residents?
Thank you very much, Tim. One of the things we're going to try and get right today is the balance between me speaking and officers speaking. Given that there's so little time, it's slightly difficult to get that balance right. So on this particular item, I think all I'm going to say is that, as I suspect
you just gone on mute, Bob.
Yeah, something's gone silent.
Okay, sorry, didn't know that had happened. I'm sure you know perfectly well, Tim, that there are legal obligations that require local authorities to be able to communicate with all residents in a modern manner. In other words, electronic communications, email, IT, all that sort of stuff. And We think we're doing okay on this. We certainly have worked very hard to be as good as we can be. We've been assessed or undertaking assessments which we think show up pretty well. So at a headline level, we definitely acknowledge the issue, and we think we're trying to do the best we can. We think we're doing okay, but I'll let probably Scott or Stephen put some of the detail on the answer for you.
Many thanks, and thank you, Chair, for getting the opportunity to provide some comments on this. So I'm Scott Credington. I'm the Deputy Chief Exec at the County Council, but I suppose for the purposes today, the Exec Director for Resources also. So just quickly give you effectively three perspectives that we work on in relation to accessibility of our services. One from just the systems and processes that are available through our website, etc. Then what we do from a staffing perspective, and then also those that are excluded, that are not comfortable or able to use the technology to access our services. So the government has put in place effectively a requirement now that all of our main interfaces with the council need to achieve an accessibility standard. For the techies out there, it's WCAG 2.2 standard, and we need to be compliant by October 24. We have an audit of that now regularly, and pleased to say that we come out of that positively, and shows that the commitment that is in place for that accessibility. We make a lot of training material available for staff, because at the end of the day, this content isn't produced centrally. It's very much every department will be compiling information items, will be providing forms for applying for different services, and all the training is available for them to be able to do that within those standards that have now been set. Linked with that, we also have we do a website accessibility test, which involves members of the public that come together to create a website testing panel. And we regularly receive feedback from them in terms of changes that we're making to the website. Have we, something that may make sense to us in the way it's laid out may not actually work for members of the public. So we put it through a strong QA test there as well. And then finally, for those that are digitally excluded for lots of different reasons, we are continuing to, as a county, champion access to fast broadband. There's a range of packages that are available across Hertfordshire to ensure no one gets left behind in relation to connectivity. But also that is available through council services such as our libraries, and also through our Step to Skills courses as well, to make sure people have got accessibility to learning about making use of technology, but also have the means to be able to do it as well. So I'll pause there, Chair.
Thank you. We're going to follow through on this with Sunny Tusel, who wants to question more depth on this. Sunny?
So again, quite following on from that, as Stella mentioned, just looking around the topic of delivery of transformation, in particular looking at the Part A, it's regarding the ongoing organisational resource review. Question really is what guidance strategically has been provided to the directorates and those making that review to optimise efficiency?
Okay. So the organisation resource review, just to get everyone on with a similar understanding, is quite a sizable saving that we've included within the budget for the coming year. So it's making the assumption that it would deliver a saving of £8 million in the coming year, and then rising to a repeating 16 million from the following year onwards. So in order to achieve that we're now looking at effectively the shape and design of the organisation, and that's made up of a number of work streams that we're going to look at how we're currently organised as a council across the areas of customer and business support. corporate and strategic services, and then also applying a range of organisational design principles like layers of management, breadth of and spans of control for managers as well. There is a headcount reduction that is associated with that in the region of around 400 FTE. But to be clear, in terms of the support that we're looking to provide staff and the organisation, is that we need to we're looking to do all we can to avoid compulsory redundancies wherever that is possible, because of the need to look at areas such as our recruitment freezing that we've been undertaking, that is providing us more flexibility now going forwards. We have a strong level of governance now that's in place, that we have something called a business design authority. So a range of proposals will be being brought forward about these different areas and work streams about whether we can configure the council differently. Up till now, we've been able to afford effectively a range of different services in each of the departments. But as we're in a period of contraction, as every other council is across the country, we feel now we've got to start looking about consolidating functions in a way and being able to then, from that consolidated function, provide that support to the wider organisation, rather than them having embedded, dedicated support that we've been able to provide up till now. So really, because of the financial challenges, it's necessitated us to have to start to look at that. But I'll pause there, Bob. Yeah, apologies. I should have let you come in first. I dived in.
No,
there.
not at all. People will realise we'll mix and match this. If I could just say to everybody, and particularly the viewing public, the organisational review is unquestionably one of the most important areas of work that sits inside our portfolio. It's very important. It's very important that we have the right sort of workforce to provide the services that we're trying to provide to the public. It's very important that the workforce know their value, but at the same time, we're an efficient fighting force. So this review that is now underway will be very important, and as time passes, we will report further as to progress and probably the detail of the progress a bit more than we're able to right now. But it's very important. It's going to happen. It will happen, and it will produce efficiencies and savings for the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonny. Okay, right.
Thank you.
Mine is a follow-through question on some of it you've just covered, but I'm looking for a little bit more detail on how does Herts County Council plan to attract, recruit, and most importantly, retain talent through organisational change, while we're looking to address at difficult times motivation, workload, and management changes as well in the levels that are taking place, particularly in the event of headcount reduction. We're trying to balance an organisation where one is coming down and one is coming up. And back to, due to the organisational review, what is the principle? What is the plan for this going forward? I know you just said in the previous, but a little bit more detail, please.
If I'll start there, Scott, if that's okay, and then you can come in. I perfectly understand the question, Stella. And again, I think this is the response is in a way a function of the fact that we're so big. We have 8,000 people, and we provide some distinctly different services, don't we? Adults on the one hand, children's on the other. So this is an institution that just inevitably breathes. It must flex, and so the flexing that will amount to the organisational review, yes, it is going to involve across the board some reduction in headcount, but it doesn't mean to say that everybody everywhere will be at risk of headcount. Everybody on this call knows that we are actively recruiting right now in children's services, for example, and we've had a very high level of demand for that. And I think there's confidence that that insofar as we're looking to recruit in children's, we will meet meet the job requirements that we're looking to fill. So I think broadly that's the headline approach. But again, Scott will come back on the detail for you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob.
So getting the balance right between maintaining effectively the phrase being an employer of choice, but also going through some sort of difficult changes as an organisation to be able to balance our budget and therefore the level of staffing that we can ultimately afford to be able to employ is a difficult one. And as far as staff are concerned, that it isn't lost on me that we are entering a period of unsettling staff. But I'll touch on about what we're doing to try to ensure that we try to minimise that as much as we can. But nonetheless, actually, Councillor Deering used an 8,000 headcount figure, and I think that's part of our issue. Is that's certainly one that we've been well used to using over the last year or so. But our headcount figure at the moment is currently 8,866. And that's happened through a few changes over recent months, which relates to a number of individuals we've insourced a number of services, including areas such as payroll, some security and facilities management functions, some IT functions. And we've now grown up to 8,800. So where we're looking at 400 headcount reduction, I think we need to put it into that context. We will still be employing over 8,000 individuals at the end of this the review. But the way that we would be looking to manage that headcount reduction, and this is the thing we'll be stressing to staff, is that we will firstly focus on looking at where vacancies currently exist and seeing whether we can restructure around those vacancies. And because we've got the vacancy freeze in place, it's targeted. We're not recruiting to social worker posts and the like, but there are certainly a number actually within this portfolio. A lot of the back office services, I have to provide an exemption if there is recruitment to take place, and there's not many exemptions that are being granted at this stage based on the rules that we've set. But what that vacancy will allow us to do is allow us to be able to use effectively the space now, the vacancies to restructure around those, remove those vacancies out the budget, and therefore avoid unnecessary redundancies as a result. We're also looking about retraining and also redeployment. Our staff in many ways are very agile in the sense that they're able to employ their skills in other parts of our business. We found that very much come to the fore during the pandemic as well. They were able to pick up so many different roles, where I think it's almost like local government of old, where you had a job description that was very narrow and that's all you ever done. Where now we're very much an organisation that we try to utilise all your talents to the best ability at the appropriate level for the pay that an individual receives. But hopefully through that more flexible approach to employment, again, we could try to avoid unnecessary redundancies. So that's the approach that we're taking as it stands at the moment. But hopefully through ongoing engagement, and one of the things that we've agreed with staff to try to avoid unsettling them unnecessary is very much keeping them up to date each month with a full briefing to all staff available. We've had many hundred join us for a call recently, our Teams call similar to this. And they fired a lot of questions at us, but I work on the basis of trying to provide everyone with the very latest information. And sometimes those messages are hard to give, but I think we should all, in many ways, I think everyone should be given a respect of making sure that everyone understands the true facts, and people will make decisions in a more informed way as a result.
Thank you, Scott. You've raised a lot of interest. We've got hands up. We're going to go through this. Ian, Councillor Ian Albert.
Yeah, just briefly. Thanks. There are some real opportunities where you mention that the functions will no longer be embedded in directions, but there are clearly some challenges. How will you ensure that staff that are no longer embedded have that knowledge about the business areas that they support to effectively support them?
Yeah, so I can't believe that there will be a one-size-fits-all approach to this. We may end up effectively consolidating functions, but those teams may still be embedded or sitting alongside the colleagues that they always have done. We might make the management of those functions more efficient. We may end up trying to provide a more flexibility that if we're short in another part of the business, that we're able to move people around where the work demands allow it. I completely understand that we deploy an approach of business partnering approach for a number of years successfully in a number of areas, including finance, including HR, where although they sit within a mothership that is HR or finance, they actually very much spend most of their working week out in the departments alongside individuals that they're supporting, and that way they better understand the business, they're more informed, and they can help provide better advice for these decisions that got to be taken.
Councillor Sally Symington, please.
Yes, hello, thank you. Thanks, Scott. Actually, my question is not dissimilar from Ian's. I just want to sort of pin down a bit more. So we've got this new horizontal, what I'm going to call a horizontal rationalisation, and you've partially answered some of Ian's questions about it. But basically, can you say who are they going to report to now? They no longer report up through their own directorate or department, and I guess more importantly, how do you then prioritise the work stream? So, for example, on comms, do you just end up with comms in one area? Who's going to say where that comes from, and how do you make sure that that's going to work?
Yeah, so we're currently in the design phase now. So I'm not in a position to be able to give you sort of a clear view about what reporting lines and reporting structures are going to be. We expect that we should be in a position to start sharing those both with councillors and then obviously with the staff more widely around June time in order to be able to undertake an appropriate level of consultation, engagement with the unions to discuss the proposals before we then implement in the autumn. So, nonetheless, if I just take the essence of your question, which is, how do we make sure that we really do reflect the needs of the business and that we don't just effectively shift all the resource and one department gets a lot of the assistance. Look, it is very much in our interest and for all exec directors' interest to set an arrangement up that this will work. It's going to require all directors to be able to identify what their needs are going to be in a more planned way. They're always going to have stuff that comes left field. We have to provide, in my head, you always try and plan 80%, but you always give yourself 20% of flex for the unforeseen events. And we need to do the same here in terms of a clear work programme that communications or finance or HR will be able, or project management, we can predict, for instance, on project management, what work needs to be taking place over the next year and what is in the pipeline for our projects. So that will be fully transparent to all the exec directors and where the resource will be allocated. That doesn't stop us moving it around with general agreement, but that would be the approach. We're also putting a review in place in probably, after a year of operation, if we think that we've sort of gone too far on certain proposals or we think that things are not working efficiently, we would obviously go back and review these things. I think when you're implementing things like this at pace, you will get some things wrong and they won't be as effective as you were hoping they would be. And then you would, at that point, we would go back and refine.
Thank you so much, Scott, for that answer. And we do appreciate the sensitivity of some of this as well. Tim, I'm going to move to yourself. Tim Williams.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm just following on from the previous questions, really. I know we've spoken about technology advancement, organisation reviews, staffing reviews, everything like that. It's as if you're doing sort of invest to transform sort of project, which I know you are, and you are taking money from the capital budget for it. But I also, I can see the sense behind doing invest to transform because that's what we need to do at the moment, sort of thing. But I also noticed when you look at the Herts County's risk report, the actual highest score there of 64 severe is that the council won't be able to find this monies to be able to do the savings to function as a council and to function within budgets. So I just wondered, how optimistic should we be that we'll be finding this money? How will we monitor the situation that the budgets are on track and we are making these savings? And I know you just mentioned there, Scott, about, in a year's time, a year's time is well down the budget route then. We could be picking up a big debt by then. So it's really how optimistic can we be that the budget savings will be achieved?
Yep. So in order to be able to provide any certainty to this, that I would say that we're now moving into a period of transformation that has a lot more risk attached to it. We can't mitigate all the risk these days. We don't have the luxury of time. And also we don't have the so-called low-hanging fruit items that you could just stop doing something or make a very straightforward saving. It needs a level of complex transformation that is now taking place that could involve implementation of technology, restructures as we've outlined, etc. However, I've got to say, as a council, when I look back over the last 5 years, certainly the 5 years I've been here, the success rate of implementing IP savings is extremely high, and we're talking in the high 90s % of a success rate of those savings being implemented. Now, as they say, the past isn't necessarily a predictor of the future, but we have a whole range of governance processes in place now that we consider every month at our highest senior management board. Takes an overview of progress against our whole savings package. So if for whatever reason a saving is beginning to struggle or wobble, and it could be a number of reasons, it could be not delivering in total the savings that was highlighted, or it may be taking twice as long, for instance, to deliver. So there's decisions either we can make as a board, either we can allocate more resources to a programme, to help speed it up, or where there's a challenge against something that we didn't foresee, we may have to make some other temporary short-term savings to effectively buy us the time to make the same. So there's lots of techniques that we've been using over the years, but we may have to make more use of them going forward.
Good heavens. Thank you, Scott. Very, very reassuring. Sunny, where the time is moving on. So Sunny, can you ask your question, please?
Yes, I'll be very brief. It's just a clarification of something that was said when I asked. The first one was around the savings. You said first year 8 million and then going on from that 16 million. So do you mean it's 8 plus 8, 16, or 8 plus 16, i.e. 24? So that's the first question. And the second question was more or less answered already, but I thought 8,000 headcount, 400 reduction, it's 5%. Sounded a bit arbitrary that you just decided it was decided that 5% would save us X amount, and so we come to that number 400. But I think you have actually explained that previously, so it's basically around the saving costs.
Okay, yes. So sorry, the saving cost,
So I understand you said it was 8 million this year.
Yes, sorry.
And then 16 million the following year. I was trying to work out it was 8 plus 16 or 8 plus 8 totaling 16.
So it's 8 next year, and then it's 8, a further 8 the year after. So it goes to a total ongoing saving of 16 million. Apologies.
That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you for that question as well, Sunny. Stephen, still want to come through?
Yes, thank you, Chair. If I could just very quickly, just to pick up some of Councillor Williams' comments and questions about the risk score being so high. Just worth flagging, that was the risk score before Christmas in the autumn when we were working up budget proposals and didn't have a budget package. These things do tend to be cyclical, and now we have published an IP with a specific set of proposals and a balanced budget for next year. That will come down. But nonetheless, we shouldn't underestimate the challenge of delivering them, as Scott has outlined. But a couple of things worth noting. Firstly, the amount of investment and resource we are putting in to help deliver those programmes. And secondly, members who were on Resources and Performance Panel in particular will be familiar with the quarterly finance reports we bring forward, and the fact we report a RAG assessment, red, amber, green, of all of our savings proposals. We go down into that level of detail. So again, members will be getting that update on progress and where we think we are on these, and an opportunity to question and challenge as needed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Stephen. Bob, your hand remains up.
Yeah, thank you, Stella. Very briefly, if I just make 4 follow-up comments. Transformation, I think it is absolutely fair comment to say that Hertfordshire County Council has a very good record of transformation. Scott's right, the more we do it, the harder it gets. but we are pretty good at it and we're committed to it. And so I think we can have some optimism that we will achieve this transformation. On the wider question, Tim, as to whether we're optimistic or pessimistic, if I may, I think the answer is that we're realistic and we are determined that we will bring this programme through. And by extension, I'd like to think that it is absolutely not controversial, that we're a good employer. We're supportive of our staff. Insofar as there may be a reduction in headcount, we will clearly endeavour to do that in the most sympathetic manner possible. And then my final comment, coming back to, I think, to Sonny's comment really, is that this programme is absolutely important, because the annual amount we will be saving on payroll costs is 16 million. That's 16 million a year every year, not a one-off. Every year, 16 million at current numbers. So it's a very, very important programme. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for those in-depth answers and the clarity as well that you've given us. I'm going to keep moving through now to Councillor Ian Albert, who again has a challenging question. Thank you, Ian.
Thanks, and thanks, Stella. What qualifications or expertise does the council possess to implement measures ensuring the prudent navigation of potential, indeed current commercial ventures, while safeguarding our interests?
If it's okay, can I start on that very briefly? Then obviously I'll let Ian or Scott or Stephen come in. Ian, again, as I think everybody in the council and associated with the council knows, we are not one of those councils that has gone out there and made vast numbers of commercial investments. You know, we do not have supermarkets in Grimsby and all that sort of thing. For as long as I've got this job, we won't be acquiring supermarkets. We will not be acquiring supermarkets in Grimsby. Nothing wrong with Grimsby, but I don't think we should be having supermarkets in Grimsby. So I think the interesting word in your question is prudent. I think we are prudent. I dare say that there are people out there that might say we're overcautious, but this is our mindset, and I'll just leave that there so that Scott can come back and talk about the detail.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Bob. I think it goes without saying that we employ a wide range of qualified property officers in various different fields. And not only that is many years of experience as well. One of the sections within our property team manage over 600 commercial tenants, providing income of over £10 million to the council. So either through letting or providing assets maybe that we're just holding temporarily for a future service need, that we're able to let them on sort of commercial terms. But in terms of big investments that Bob was making reference to, effectively the government has really limited abilities of councils to be able to do that in response to some maybe excessive behaviours from some other councils up and down the country. But through our housing development company, Hearts Living Limited, they do hold one commercial development that we actually completed on before all the rules began to change, it's a campus, employment campus in the Waltham Cross area. And that's been remarkably successful. It's appreciated in capital value, and effectively the net rent against the borrowing costs that we expended in terms of loaning the money to Hearts Living to buy the asset makes more than enough money effectively to run HLL as a result. So that one investment has allowed us to keep running HLL as a zero cost for us at HCC. So we also have a range of other strategies in place. We have something called the Strategic Asset Management Plan, and that's a piece of work that got completed over the last year, which has effectively categorised every asset that we own, and has determined effectively within that category about how we now take it forward. We might have some assets that are in the right place, but they're very high cost in terms of running costs. So we need to look at improvements to those assets to bring down the costs of running those properties. But we also have a number of properties, county properties, all located within a very in a vicinity, within a town or a village, where actually we feel that their level of consolidation of services could come together. So they're working through those proposals as we speak. We also have a very active rural estates plan, which generates a sizable income for the authority as well. And then we also undertake a wide range of strategic site promotion with district councils. And a good example of that is with Baldock development, with effectively a development within Baldock to provide a garden village to be able to deliver many more homes for the future as well. But in turn, with our development partner, will generate a sizable capital receipt to be able to fund our capital program in the long term. So yeah, so I understand and appreciate the challenge. I just feel through the different aspects of property, sometimes it can't always be seen the commercialism of the focus they do in raising quite important money for the council, both in capital and revenue terms.
Yeah, can I thank you, Stella. I just wanted to add very quickly that I think we have made progress during this administration in terms of our asset register. I think we have a much tighter register now than we had formerly. We've got pretty good processes about identifying whether a property asset should be retained or disposed of. And as Scott has said, we have a lot of assets that earn revenue for us. Each asset is taken on its own merits, and when the asset values are enough, they'll come before a resources and performance panel. And I think we've got a pretty good balance on it right now. So just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott and Bob. Sally?
I thought Ian was going to ask a question. Sorry, I wanted to come back to the Ian. Have I bumped you off?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I was only going to ask that where does the challenge? I think either perhaps Scott, in terms of there's real recruitment, as we've seen in other areas, and I'm sure yours, real recruitment challenges in terms of getting qualified property officers and in other areas. How is that going to impact upon the team in a way that actually makes it difficult for us to manage the things we do, and certainly to look to do more potential commercial ventures in future that might come along?
Who's answering? Scott, can we have a succinct answer to this?
Of course. So just as of today, and again, I can only talk today, our property team is pretty much has very few vacancies as a property service. We're making very little use of agency workers within the service as well. And however, also there are very specialist elements of the service that sometimes we partner up. We have a range of partners that we will work and can supplement maybe gaps that we'll have from time to time. So I've got to say the market does change very rapidly, but as things stand today, fingers crossed, touching wood, we're in a good place at the moment.
Well, thank you, Scott. To a big subject. Sally, I'm going to let you go with your question.
Okay, thank you. So I'll try and be quick, because I know, Stella, you're trying to keep to time. I just feel that this item has basically become very property orientated, and obviously the council is looking to do other commercial ventures, one of which obviously comes across my the portfolio that I look at, which is adult care, and the assistive technology project is one that I just want to highlight. So, have an understanding of the risks, because obviously anything to do with IT, that's setting up a business to deliver that, you're competing with people outside who are commercial organisations who can afford to pay experts in that area much higher salaries than the council can. So basically, what are the risks to the income streams that are projected in the IP from those commercial ventures?
I think, Sally, I'm afraid I'm going to comment on what was being talked about before your question, and then we'll come back to your question. I'm really sorry. I'll back to Ian's point. I just wanted to say that Scott's mentioned Baldock. We've also got prospectively a very interesting development running in conjunction with Broxbourne, or what's called Brookfield. And some of the skills that are needed for us as a county council participating in these projects are of quite a particular level. I'm, as is called Scott, I'm briefed on these a lot, and I am absolutely clear that we have the appropriate expertise to meet the needs of Hertfordshire County Council in these actually very big potential property developments. So I'm sorry I squeezed that in there, Sally. I don't know whether Scott wants to come straight in and deal with your question.
No, I think just for a change, I think we're going to hand over to Stephen, who's going to answer some questions now. So over to Stephen.
Just very quickly on the assistive tech though point, Sally, for anyone who doesn't know, this is some brilliant technology that's been developed within the county council that supports people in adult care remain in their homes. We're at very early stages with that. We're rolling it out within Hertfordshire, maximising the benefit to the service. We also think there may be some opportunities commercially to sell that to other councils. We're in very early stages and we're looking to see if we can partner up with some councils initially to help test that and refine that product further. But then we will need to be very careful, exactly as you say, Sally, to get the right expertise in. There are actually some advantages, though, that some of those issues that you describe around the private sector and their expertise, actually, in some respects, sometimes that can be a bit of a turn-off for those other councils, and they would much rather partner with a public sector entity. There's almost a greater level of trust there. So we think we have some competitive advantage there, but it's very early stages and we've not built any income assumptions from that into the IP. We have built some expected benefits into our own operations in adult care from that rollout into the adult care budget, but still at a relatively modest scale.
Thank you, Stephen. For more detail, Bob.
Yeah, I'm just going to add that the project that Sally refers to is very innovative, and I think we should be proud that we have officers internally who have absolutely originated this project for us and done a huge amount of work on it. I mean, really, it's quite extraordinary the expertise they've brought to bear. But when it comes to commercialisation and indeed whether the product will wash its face, I mean, obviously we will be open-minded and pragmatic, and if it turns out that it cannot stand up in the marketplace, well, we'll have to make decisions accordingly. But just right now, I'm sure we're right to be moving it forward.
Absolutely, Bob, of course. I'm going to move on to our next question, and I know we could be here probably for the afternoon answering all of our questions. I appreciate that, but it feels like a bit of a Grand Prix at the moment. So Fiona Guest, Councillor Fiona Guest, please, your question. Can't hear you, Fiona. You get yourself on mute. Still can't hear, Fiona. There you are. You're back.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Yep. In light of the ongoing challenges in the public sector, what processes has the council used to identify new innovative strategies for generating income? And could you please provide details on the current stages of the outcomes achieved so far?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Guest. If I can pick that one up, please. The sorts of income you describe are a critical part of the council's budget. Next year, it will exceed £140 million, an increase from the current year. And just to give you a sort of brief overview of some of the areas where we receive that income, some is for services, including for adult care. Some is through the sorts of commercial ventures we've been talking about, some of our existing established ones. Some is through our property functions and our estates, again, as we've been touching on. And some comes, albeit at a lower level, from sharing services, and we get some income, but equally also that helps maintain and keep those services stable. We do look constantly for other opportunities, including discussing with other councils where they might be looking to gain income. But I think it's fair to say it's difficult to find completely new sources of income. Our focus tends to be more on how we might stretch and extend some of those existing sources further. So, for example, I think you've heard both Scott and Councillor Deering refer to the Strategic Asset Management Plan. how we might get more income from our property assets, both in terms of rental income, but also where there might be disposal opportunities. And I know colleagues in legal services, for example, are always looking to see where they might be able to extend shared services opportunities, to say bolstering those services, helping recruitment, but also gaining income. So it's more of a stretch and extend rather than really new opportunities coming through.
Thank you. But adult care, property and estates and shared services, and projected to raise £140 million plus in the next year. So you've already answered the supplementary as to what the projected income was going to be in the next financial year. Thank you.
Stella, could I just add again briefly as possible that
Thank you, Bob.
As everyone knows, we have a very small number of incorporated businesses that we run under our umbrella. Hearts Living Limited is one that most people are aware of, but we have Hearts Catering and Hearts Full Stop. Again, I think it is absolutely right and fair to say that we look at all of these all the time, and we are not closed-minded as to where they go. I think we are pragmatic and we deal with those entities in a very acceptable business-like manner. I just thought I'd add that. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Bob. That was good to hear. I'm going to now, Sarah, you're following through with the question on this one. Can you put your question forward? Thank you.
Yeah, no questions on the reserves and funding. Recognising the escalating demands of children's services, adult social care and infrastructure alongside our substantial savings programme, what strategy are we implementing to ensure that our reserves are replenished and maintained to healthy levels, as in the last and new financial year we are using 13 million in reserves?
Thank you, Councillor Talon. If I can pick that one up. As the Council's Director of Finance, I am required to formally report to Council, as well as the robustness of the budget, but my view on our level of reserves and whether they are adequate. There's very little specific external guidance on what a reasonable level is. It's very much down to my judgment, comparing to other councils, considering the risks and issues we face, and my confidence in our levels of controls. You will see, as you rightly point out, we are using a significant level of reserves both in the current year and to support next financial year, and clearly those reserves can be used only once. So I think it is an entirely appropriate use of those reserves to help protect services, but clearly it does reduce the level of reserves we hold. And you'll see in the IP, I'm raising specific concerns about those levels of reserves and how low they will be as a result. That's particularly compared to other councils, but also then, as you rightly say, given the level of risks we face moving forward. The current integrated plan and budget plans does not top those reserves back up in future years. And I think given the financial challenges we face as a council, it will be very difficult to do that. So we will need to be even more careful with the level of reserves we now hold and the implications of that. So two sort of specific examples that spring to mind. Firstly, we have in the current year used reserves to help support the budget. And that's meant whilst we have been looking for in-year savings to help support and offset some of the pressures, we've been able to use reserves and we haven't had to pull back services quite as far as otherwise we might need to. We won't necessarily have that flexibility moving forward. So if pressures start to emerge and the budget starts to get off track, we'll need to take more immediate corrective action around that. Secondly, what we won't be able to do in future years is use the level of reserves we have done in each of the two recent years. So we'll need to bear that in mind, and our transformation programmes will need to adapt accordingly, making sure we're delivering savings in the medium term to help balance, rather than using reserves at the current level we are.
Succinct answers, Stephen. Sally, you have your hand up to follow through.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Stella. Thanks, Stephen. Well, since we obviously had our key lines of inquiry questioned, we've had an announcement that the county council is going to, well, all local authorities are going to receive, 500 for the upper tier authorities, 500 million, of which I understand Herts County Council will receive between 8 and 10 million. So obviously this is potentially a windfall for answers to the question that Sarah asked in terms of replenishing resources, but I guess it would be useful to have some lead on whether the money that's actually been granted by the government to go into resources is going to go into services, is actually delivered in services, or whether the council will be putting it into reserves.
Councillor Deering, did you want to come in first before I pick up anything else?
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, thank you, Stephen, very much. If I could just say that in general terms, you can just see from Stephen's comments that we take an extremely prudent approach to our reserves. We are most definitely not cavalier with our reserves. There have in previous years been calls from various quarters of the council that we should be spending reserves on X or on Y, and when those requests in previous years have been considered and the view has been taken that that would not be prudent, then we have not done that. So we do manage our reserves in a very careful way. I think in that context, again, in broad terms, very broadly, we have two types of reserve. We have earmarked reserves that, as the expression suggests, are earmarked for certain specific purposes. And then we will have a general reserve. Earmarked reserves, by definition, are earmarked and have specific functions attached to them. But we do regularly review those reserves just to make sure that there isn't still money left in them which frankly is no longer necessary. So those reserves are looked at on a live basis, and similarly the general reserve, we keep it under observation. We're very mindful that we're using reserves currently in the IP, and I would absolutely like to associate myself with Stephen's comments. We need to be extremely alive to the fact that we are using reserves in the IP. Coming on to Sally's question, yes, I'm not going to shy away from saying that it would have been nice if we'd got some money in the autumn statement, and it would have been nice if we'd got some money in the end of year settlement. So it's very good that we've now got this amount coming our way. Stephen will correct me, but I'm not sure that we can precisely say how much it will be at the moment, but I think we're all expecting it will be in the 8 to 10 million bracket. And as of today, I mean, the announcement came, was it yesterday or the day before? As of today, we have not formulated our view as to exactly how we will apply that money into the financing of the council. But it is very welcome, and we will apply it in the best way we can. But Stephen may want to add more detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. It is most definitely very welcome. Stephen.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. I think members will be aware of the lobbying the council has been doing all year on our financial position, and particularly how we link in with the county council's network and how they bring together in one voice all the county views. Even after the autumn statement, even after the provisional settlement in December, they were continuing the lobbying, and there was a particular piece they did and launched over the weekend. And then 2 days ago on Wednesday, there was some extra money announced from government. Highly unusual. I think it's the first time since 2016 that any additional funding has been announced for councils between the provisional settlement and the final settlement. So it does sort of indicate the strength of that lobbying. At the moment, we don't know the allocation for Hertfordshire. Indeed, no councils do. That will come with the final settlement due early February. But the sort of range being talked about, 8 to 10 million, is my current best estimate of that. As Councillor Deering says, more work to do with Cabinet next week to agree final plans for use of that. And then final Cabinet budget papers will come out next Friday, the 2nd of February. So, of course, we'll make sure, as normal, those get shared with all members. So you can see the plans for that funding. Now, clearly, extra funding is welcome, but sums of single-figure millions probably aren't going to change any of the issues we have been talking about throughout this scrutiny.
Thank you, Stephen. Let's keep our eye on that page. Sally, last but not least, final keyline question.
Can I just come back, Stella, on Stephen's last comment? No, it's okay. And maybe it might be helpful for members if I just add that one of the kind of interesting bits of the dynamic between, in our case, us and central government, is that obviously we would like to receive money from central government, but when central government, in very broad terms, decides if it's going to give county councils money, guess what it does? One of the things it does is it looks at their reserves. And if central government thinks that local authorities like us have got too much stashed away in reserves, they're a little bit less keen on handing out money. So there's just an interesting subtlety there that we all need to be aware of. But that in no way at all is to in the slightest bit diminish what Stephen said earlier, which is that we do need to be very mindful of the way we're using reserves. We are using reserves in this IP. And it's very, very important that we all acknowledge that. It's an important part of this IP. Thank you.
Absolutely agree, Bob. And the word is interesting. Sally, apologies to us for your question, please.
Great, thank you. I'm glad I'm not being filibustered out. So last question, really important. And again, it was written before the statements by Michael Gove. So I don't know quite whether that's going to change the answer that you're giving. But the question, as written before yesterday's statement, was, given the council's emphasis on embedding diversity and inclusion as a priority, without explicit mention of an action plan in the IP, what steps is the council planning to take to address this?
Bob,
if it's okay, I'll start on this. Yes, it's in a way extraordinary that your question's there, Sally, and then Michael Gove said what he said the other day.
So I just need a point of order, Chair. I didn't write that question. I said I would ask it, and it was drafted by the scrutiny committee.
I'm sorry, but anyway, you take my point. There's a kind of a coincidence in the question of Michael Gove, isn't there? I'm going to be a bit self-indulgent on this and start with my personal view. Based on my own personal experience of life and also my working experience, I'm absolutely a believer in inclusion, and therefore the diversity aspect of inclusion. It's absolutely, in my personal opinion, it's essential that people are included. They're in the tent, they feel that they're included. And that will apply to everyone who's in our society. I think it is just essential. And therefore, if I move into put my HCC hat on, I am proud of the fact that this administration, as you say, or the question says, identified diversity as a priority, diversity and inclusion as a priority. And I'm glad that we've taken steps to do something about it. So far as we're concerned, and I am going to speak on behalf of this administration, our commitment to diversity and inclusion remains completely undiminished. But over to Scott or Stephen for the detail as to where we are.
Yeah, just a few points with this, because I think from HCC's perspective, I think that if we were just producing, I don't know, sort of meaningless plans, policies that weren't making any change in the way that we delivered services, I would have some sympathy for governments that were challenging effectively the effectiveness of the work that we were doing. But at HCC, we have a very small team of what I describe as experts in this field, and it's their job to help us as managers and leaders to develop and to think of things sometimes in a different way than maybe our own experiences and our own ways that we've been brought up. And off the back of that, we see that expertise as working alongside us rather than just effectively us able to devolve or delegate that responsibility to someone else. It's incumbent on all leaders and members of staff within HEC to embrace the importance of diversity and inclusion, because it's ultimately the community that we need to reflect. And the last time I looked, the Hertfordshire community is somewhat diverse, and we need to make sure that we reflect that. So in many ways, we could get caught up in and look deeply into the words that Michael Gove has written over this week, but I'm very content with the way that HEC is going about this.
Thank you for that answer, Scott. Thank you for the last of our questions today. Well, that was an absolute challenge. I'd like to thank all members involved in this, the work that's got into this, and to our officers. Wow, thank you so much. Thank you so much. To cover what we've covered in an hour is to be recognised. Well done, everyone and the team. David, can I hand back to you?
Yes, and once again, I mean, Stella, absolutely outstanding. Everybody has kept to time, and virtually all the meetings ended on the dot. While I've got you here, I just want to remind you we're coming back at 3:30 to start to bring the recommendations forward. But while I've got the majority of you here, can I just thank everybody that's been involved in this process? This is the end of 2 days for us sitting here in Mission Control in County Hall. And unbeknownst to you and very often us, we've had fantastic support in the background from Democratic Services. Carly has been an absolute star, but we very seldom hear from her, but we know she's there looking after our best interests. Andrew has been playing on the doll's eye switchboard. That shows you how old I am, keeping us all connected one with the other, and that's worked extremely well. And I've identified that we've also had contributions from Democratic Services in the shape of Teresa, Elaine, and Stephanie. I'm not quite clear what they're doing, but they're holding us all together and keeping us at the grindstone. And of course here we've got Natalie and Joanna, who are still and will continue to work away into the evening and possibly over the weekend until we've got the recommendations in a form that we can bring in a week's time to overview and scrutiny for ratification on Friday. And also, of course, each of the chairmen has had the benefit of the support from graduate trainees who, have been beavering away, put a lot of effort into it, and otherwise wouldn't get a mention. And I do hope at some stage I can be a bit more formal about it in thanking them, but I certainly want to make their contribution known to us all. So on that basis, can I invite you to take a short break, come back to us at 3:30. We'll go into, first of all, we'll start with the recommendations emerging or not emerging from sustainable economic growth. That might be fairly quick. So if you could all be back at 3:30 and we'll launch into 7 and 8. Thank you very much. See you in a short while.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Stephen, Bob, and Scott.
Thank you, Chair.
Brilliant.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, 3:30. Here we are for our evidence gathering session. David, did you want to say anything to kick off?
Yes, here we are. We're just about to launch into the final phase of today's work, at least the public facing final phase. There will be some work going on amongst the scrutiny team for a while to come. But here we are. Thank you everybody for coming back promptly at 3:30. We're going to launch straight into the recommendations and outcomes from Portfolio 7, the Sustainable Economic Growth Group, and that's going to be presented by Joanna. Thank you, Joanna.
I just had to turn my mic. So with the Sustainable Economic Growth, touched on some real key issues, one of them being planning of staff that is in short supply, and discussed how they were working with districts and boroughs to tackle this and really to provide an attractive offer through variable work and career progression. But staffing still remained a considerable risk. But ways again, tackling it was looking at flexible working, because we cannot compete, unfortunately, with the remuneration of the private sector. Following on from this, it was discussed around local planning in Section 106 and the importance of really good stewardship to kind of look at preventative flooding, look at biodiversity net gain, and to have quality green spaces for residents when we're planning in regards to new housing developments. Looking at this through the joint committees, for example, with the Harlow development, is an example of that. Then obviously was discussed as well the question around the Luton expansion, what will happen if it does go ahead or if not, and ways that we're going to mitigate it if it does go ahead in regards to things like congestion, so funding for road improvements, etc., and opportunities that this project could arise from. Then discussed around the growth and infrastructure budget and the cuts to that, and how we're looking at service redesign to mitigate some of those issues, and really looking again at the kind of sustainable development, and in the process of developing a development quality charter to improve the sustainability design of our projects. And then further discussion around the Herts LEP and how and the Herts Growth Board, and looking at growing new kind of economic, growing the economy in Hertfordshire, and coordinating that strategy between growth and sustainability. That this provides greater opportunities. Moving on from that, I'm going to ask Natalie now to share the one proposal that we put forward from that emerging recommendation from your discussion.
Can you make that bigger?
Yep. Just be some feedback. Just sorry, one second. Feedback.
Thanks.
So the proposed recommendation would be for the council to provide assurance that the required skills and resources available to deliver communities that meet demand and deliver the sustainable growth agenda. And then there also would be a proposal that identifying around the recruitment and skill shortage would be put forward, and staffing as part of the overarching strategic recommendations as well, which has been drawn out from further other portfolios throughout these 2 days. Over to you, John. Sorry, Jonathan.
That's okay. Anybody got any comments to make? Fiona.
I think that's a very good recommendation, and I think reflects all our conversations. I don't think it probably is a recommendation, but I just wonder about adding on. We asked the question on risk to new developments, and we're assured that HCC funding isn't the main part of where the money comes from. It comes from stakeholders and partners. Just got a sort of nagging worry of what would happen if something was to happen to one of the developers, which has happened in other areas, and they're not able, then they've gone into liquidation, and the project has a risk of failing at that point, and how we can mitigate against that. Not sure whether it's a recommendation or an informative or just a question, really.
Thanks, Fiona. That's really helpful. Yes, happy to. I'll add that to the recommendation to include your comments.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Thanks, Fiona. In terms of the what you said about the Luton Airport expansion, Joanna, can you just go over that again? Because this is one of those issues that's in Bedfordshire, and we have a little influence, but probably not a lot. What was it you said about Luton Airport before? I didn't quite take it in.
So the Luton expansion was in regards to if it does go ahead, that we have mitigations in place. So, for example, noise pollution, additional congestion due to the extra, obviously expansion of Luton Airport, that there was mitigations in place to kind of reduce those increasing demands and pressures, and also the additional environmental pressure.
Right, but that's not going into the recommendation because we're not there yet, are we? And we don't know what will happen with.
Correct. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Anybody else got any comments to make? Stephen, do you have anything you want to add at all?
No, I think the recommendation that's shown there is absolutely fine, and we'll agree with that. A little bit concerned about having a recommendation about what happens if developers go bust. It's not in our gift to do anything about that. It's closer to the planning authorities and indeed the landowners to do something about it. It would be different if, say, you're talking about Baldock, where we are a landowner, but generally, I think it's difficult for us to mitigate a developer going bust on a development that wasn't ours.
Okay. Interesting. Yes, I can see the complications that could arise out of that. Fiona, do you want to come back in?
If it would solve the problem, could it just be some sort of informative awareness so that we are aware that that is a risk? Basically, we were talking about the risks element, weren't we, of development. That was one of the questions about what were the risks. And
yes, I think as an informative that it is a risk. I think that's true because developers do go bust from time to time.
Yes, that's what's worrying me. It's happened a few times in various districts, and obviously now at the moment things aren't good at all, are they, in that particular industry? So I just think it's a real risk at the moment. That's all.
Joanna.
Thank you, Jonathan. If it would be beneficial, we could clarify that the recommendation with regards to the risk of developers going bust or into liquidation, that it's solely our responsibility when we own the land, so we are the planning authority. Would that be helpful?
I suppose that would clarify things.
Yes, would.
Okay.
Yeah.
Otherwise, are we content with the recommendation? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Well, that's it then, isn't it? I think.
Good. Well, it's better to have one clear recommendation than three that are less clear. And as I said earlier in the week, it's quality, not quantity, that we're after here. Okay. Well, super. Thanks for that. Well, we can move straight through now into Portfolio 8, which was ably chaired by Stella, and we're going to pick up on that with help from Natalie.
Mm-hmm. Welcome back, everyone.
Hello, everyone. I think the session that Stella chaired, along with the questions from members, I think was an excellent piece of scrutiny. I think you asked some very telling and challenging questions, and I think you got some really informative and very candid answers from the executive member and the officers who accompanied him. I think you were given an update in terms of the rapidly developing situation in terms of budget suddenly coming in this week, and then the executive member and officers kind of welcoming that, but wanting to make sure that it's used prudently to within the overall IP budget proposals. You heard about a lot of the transformational activity that's taking place, both within very specific services, but also what the centre is doing under Scott's direction in terms of, say, the organisational resource review, talking about things. Jobs being consolidated, teams being consolidated, line management lines being altered, headcount up for consideration, and that you heard about the recruitment freeze, but you were given assurance that those important frontline and indeed some back office jobs are continuing to be recruited to ensure that the authority continues to be well managed. There was a challenge around the risk register and the HCC having monies available to make sure that it's able to address the budget. How is that being monitored? And you were given assurance that that because of the rapidity of the way the situation is developing, that risk will be lowered when the report next goes to audit committee. A great deal of candour that, you know, not all risks can be mitigated, but that the executive member and his officers are doing what they can to be realistic and pragmatic about the decisions that they make and where resources are being allocated. You also heard about the strategic asset management, about the way that rural estates, umbrella companies that the authority is responsible for, etc., how they are part of the portfolio that bring income generation to the authority, and also the way that they continue to mean that this authority is a vibrant organisation to work for and therefore can attract and retain staff, because that's not to be sniffed at. And there was a question around reserves and concern being voiced back from officers and the cabinet member about once reserves are used, they're gone. So that it's a difficult decision that has to be made, and particularly in view of the current economic situation for local government, when those reserves will be replenished is a difficult one. And you heard about equality, diversity, and inclusion, and actually that Scott, as the kind of owner of this, is seeing that as very much being a thread that runs through everything, rather than having a specific plan about how it's done. It's being managed that staff and managers are being kept informed, thinking about their approaches, modifying the way that they do things to enable this authority to reflect the community it serves, and again reflect the society of Britain in 2024. Joanna is now going to do the same as we did with the previous portfolio, which is to put up some recommendations for your consideration. What we've got there is the assistive technology, which I'm really pleased. I think I'm sorry, I can't remember which member raised this one, but I was really pleased because I think assistive technology has the potential to really enhance the quality of life for some of our more vulnerable residents and give them that level of independence that we know that they would welcome. So absolutely think it's a fantastic development. However, we do know that departments are looking to achieve some savings through introducing this assistive technology, and a concern that I've kind of tried to capture there about being supportive of assistive technology, but actually that the technology itself is developed and its rollout will align to deliver the anticipated savings within the departments that are going down that route. Second suggested recommendation, based on where the conversation again centred this afternoon, was the budgetary consequence should the organisational resource review fail to deliver the projected savings. Those are ambitious savings targets year on year, alongside other savings that Scott's directorate plus
the other directorates within the local authority are seeking to manage. So I would suggest that that might be something that you have some consideration for. And then the focus on reserves, that drawing on reserves that will not be immediately replenished leaves less room for manoeuvre if there are future pressures on budget due to factors such as inflation, rising demand, etc. So in consultation with Joanna and David Andrews, those are the three recommendations which, from our observation of your discussions, appeared to be the primary ones. But at that point, Stella, I will leave them up on the screen, but I will pass back to you for leading debate with your members. And I've got my pen handy for any suggested changes of words, etc., etc.
Well, we have three strong recommendations here, but thank you. I'm going to go straight to Sally. Hand is up, and that's the only hand What's your thoughts, Sally?
Stella, thank you. Thanks, Natalie. I don't.
And thank you, Natalie. Yes.
Yeah, is 3 the limit?
There is no limit. However, I am getting hard Paddington stares from the chairman of the committee that probably not to go too wild, I think, would be the advice.
Fine. OK, well, I tell you what, I'll rephrase it in a different way. I know that you said lots of fine things about and so did the lead member, and so did other officers about diversity and inclusion. But actually, there was no answer to the question as to what is the action plan. I heard lots of nice warm things, but I didn't get an answer to that question. So I've no sight on what the action plan is or how that's actually going to be delivered. So that's more of a comment. I don't know how you reflect that, but I just wanted to say that. Obviously, you've picked up on some other important things. Assistive technology isn't just about making money, which is, I know, one of the council's ambitions. You're right. The rollout of it is essential to enabling people to stay living at home and independently for longer, and that will deliver, as you say, anticipated savings. So it comes in two effects. The second one, budgetary consequence. Yeah, well, of course that we do need to have a feel for that. I'm not quite sure what the third one is. It feels more like a statement, but I'm not. It's a fair enough statement, but I'm not quite sure kind of what's meant by it, other than it's an observation.
It's trying to make the point that reserves have been used to assist with the IP proposals for this year so that services can be delivered. However, if there are fewer reserves to draw on in the future, what impact would that have on service? So it's trying to get to that. That's so perhaps what I failed to say.
I think if we look at what Stephen said, it was his concern. Bob was brighter on it, but within the IP, Stephen has put his concerns over the reserves. So I think there is a recommendation regarding the reserves and what if, and the detail attached to that. I think that's quite pertinent, in fact, and I know Stephen has raised it in there quite clearly. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. So, but what are we actually asking for? I can see that it's a statement, and I don't disagree on it. Of course, it has an impact. But what are we actually asking?
Are we not asking the what if? What if the reserves? What is the plan? If the reserves don't cover, is that the question? Or they're too tight? It's all too tight.
I think it doesn't need to be a question. So we can play around with the wording to clarify it. What I would say is what we would like to do is to get the recommendations out to you tonight in draft, so that you've then got time to deliberate among yourselves as a group, and then Stella confirming the wording that she wants
for the recommendations going forward. So this is kind of suggestions to get the juices going in terms of thinking. And if there is a better set of wording that reflects what I'd hoped to present there, but obviously isn't working, you can clarify.
Mindful that drawing on reserves that will not be immediately being replenished leaves less room for remain and points of item.
Okay.
Officers remain.
Mindful. Yeah.
That didn't go out. They haven't.
Oh. So one suggestion is that it's prefaced by officers remain mindful that drawing on reserves, blah, 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 kind of, and then switch the, make that sort of more grammatically, because it then doesn't work, but you've got the idea.
Got the idea.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We're putting it on somebody's door.
Definitely. Any comments? Tim.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. I just caught hold of the tail end of that sort of Portfolio 7's recommendations. They mentioned human resources. And I think it was mentioned in other panels as well. Of course, human resources officially comes under resources and performance cabinet panel. Should we add it, or do we think it's going to be covered elsewhere? Because we haven't picked it up. There could be a comment. Well, we didn't pick it up.
We did. Do you want me to come in,
Stella?
Please,
do you want me to come in? Yeah. So the way that OSC manages its recommendations is it has specific ones per portfolio, and then if there are strands of thinking which emerge across one or more portfolios, and staffing broadly is one of those, that's regarded as a strategic recommendation, which OSC will debate. So what Joanna and I are doing, we're collating the remarks around staffing that have been expressed at the different portfolio evidence gathering sessions, because what planners need in terms of staffing could be quite different to what adult care need, but it still remains a recruitment retention CPD type of thing. So my suggestion would be we put in the strategic anything that you're mindful of in terms of emerging from this particular portfolio.
Yeah, that's fine, as long as it is actually noted by us here that there is an issue across the council with retention and recruitment, and especially due to some of those specialist skill sets.
We have noted it, Tim, asked a specific question around it. So yeah, absolutely. It will not go under the carpet, that one. Ian?
How do we deal with the emerging issue that Sally asked about, which was the how we, I think it was Sally that asked about the use of the whatever it will be, the £8 to £10 million, because clearly, that is a really quite fundamental and important question. Obviously, if we'd have known a week or two ago, we may have had the answers to what we are going to do with it, but clearly it is very much, I suspect, an issue of interest and concern and debate in terms of when it would come to the budget meeting, and let alone the scrutiny meetings, about how that money is going to be used.
Very, very fair point, but I think at this stage we need to bear in mind that there's bound to be some arm wrestling over this within the authority, but equally I would be extremely surprised if it didn't come with a bucket load of conditions indicating the very strong preference where it should go. So I'm sure that we all actually very, very keen to know how much, when, where, and why, what we're going to be allowed to spend it on. I'm sure that'll emerge over the next few weeks.
Are we able to put that in as a question or as a caveat or as something? Is it clearly just to make sure that the people are aware that we did have a discussion about it? We haven't sort of not thought about it. It's because it is going to be really probably one of the biggest issues of the moment, actually.
Yeah, I'll keep my powder dry on that one. I claim the fifth. Yeah, I really don't know. It's too early, and we ain't seen the colour of their dollars yet. So it will come forward. It'll come to cabinet at some stage, and we'll get a sight on it, and we'll be able to feed it into the political system. I'm not entirely sure. I'm not entirely comfortable with it going through at the moment, and again, not necessarily under RMP, because the allocations may go to other directorates. So that's my thinking on it.
I can understand that. Natalie. So we've got still staying with the recommendations. Any further comments?
But my only further comment would be, just in response to what David just said, is that whilst obviously this is about directorates, clearly there's no other directorate that looks across the piece in the way that resources and performance does. So if we don't mention this, no one else is going to.
Can we put it as not as a note, but as a tail end, that this has this has come in the last 2 days,
48 hours, yeah,
the last 48 hours, and that we note, but we were unable to comment or ask questions regarding it without the detail.
Yeah, I think perhaps a note to the effect that
we did not see it, we did not know, but we haven't got the detail, and it would be wrong for us to comment, to make it up as, to think, well, we want it, that it's going to go here, it's going to go there, because no one else knows. And as you said, David, we haven't seen the colour of the dollars yet.
Yeah, quite. Perhaps the group might want to welcome it, and just say the group noticed the recent news, noticed and welcomed the recent news that there's an increased allocation coming forward, and we'll watch with interest to see where it's used.
Yeah, we welcome it. We certainly do welcome it. Sally, I've got Sally and Natalie. Natalie first. Just it's in a tiny little screen at the moment, so I can hardly see it.
It was a very quick thing. Yes, I'll add that that you welcome the additional funding. A thought that does sit just going through my mind is that OSC will be considering these strategic recommendations that I discussed. There might be a form of wording that then OSC will debate on the 2nd of February, which might give everybody a bit more thinking time or whatever, because it's all kind of very emergent, isn't it? And it's very difficult to have a rational conversation without knowing somewhat more about how much money we're talking about and whether it is going to come with these strings attached. So, Stella, that's one suggestion. I'll leave with you and the group to say whether they think that's a reasonable idea, because I can easily do that.
I understand that. How does the rest of the team feel about that? Sally, hand is up.
Yeah, sorry, I am coming back to these.
Okay.
Can I just say what I was going to say, and then I'll consider what you're asking about and what Natalie said. We've talked about the budgetary consequences of the organisational resource review in terms of whether it delivers the projected savings, but it actually has quite significant, the delivery of the services and some of the associated bits is also it isn't just a savings thing. It's actually it's going to be delivering things differently. I think that we should note that there is a risk to the two key ones that always come up are communications and finance. But I guess I did ask about this, like once you stop, and I'm not saying it shouldn't happen, but there is a risk when it stops being, by departmental area to across the board about about the delivery of that, in terms of the effectiveness and whether it's,
Okay, so what do we put forward? What we're going to recommend around that? The extra. I can hear what you're saying. How are we going to phrase it?
Well, that it fails to deliver the projected savings and/or jeopardizes the delivery of services to residents.
Yeah.
Effective delivery, because effectively that it's not the front line, is it? It's what's sits behind all that. So that was one thing. And the second thing is going back to this business about the reserves. Obviously we didn't talk about it in the meeting, but Bob Deering did mention about earmarked reserves. Actually, one of the things that's happened in this IP has been a massive clear out of all the earmarked reserves, and we now only have 3 areas of reserves. So whether and one of them, I can't remember what one of them is because I'm not looking at it, but it's 20 million for something that may or may not happen. Anyway, it's basically been a big clear out of earmarked reserves. So, you know, what is the impact of that? Basically just having these, you know, okay, lower, but reserves that are no longer earmarked effectively. And the first one, so going back to the assistive technology, I mean, it's really interesting and nice, but it is kind of, it's not like the biggest issue for this portfolio. In fact, if anything, it's a big issue for adult care, or it's an issue for adult care. It's not even a big issue for them. So whether that's the one that's dropped and we put in something about staff, because obviously staff is key, isn't it? And everybody said that. So but again, that comes back to what Natalie said. I don't know where that sits in terms of how it's reported by the scrutiny. So whether it's not specific, I mean, but it just feels like it should sit here somewhere. Anyway, those are my comments. I don't have answers. I'm sorry if I'm throwing out questions, but I'm just making suggestions about things I think that are important.
No, stimulating the brains, definitely. I think more than 3. Can we not make maybe the middle one to include some of what Sally has just said, make it just a little bit more meaty, and therefore we have put it in, we have it as a statement or as a recommendation in writing. It's not just the budgetary consequences, organisational review, and what happens as a consequence of that. Yeah. I think the assistive technology one, I understand. Sorry, David. And I think it does sit within resources, but and going forward, because that somehow is going to align with the organisational review as well, with the organisational restructuring. The two technically should merge together to go forward. I don't know how to put that all together.
I've got some sympathy for what Sally said around projected savings. It's not just about savings, it's also about preserving services. So how about if fail to deliver the projected services whilst continuing to maintain the appropriate high level of customer service,
while continuing to maintain.
Well, I suppose if you're maintaining, you are continuing, aren't you? So continuing is unnecessary. One of the other continuing or maintaining, but whilst maintaining, a suitably effective level of customer services. Yeah, Natalie's nodding that she can come up with some words around that. So we're not just looking at the money, we're also making sure that at the very least services do not degrade or suffer. That's some thought.
Fiona, you've got up some time.
Then the top recommendation about assistive technology, that was already covered in the adult care scrutiny group a few days ago. I think Natalie, you're shaking your head there. I do remember being covered, and we want to avoid duplication.
Yeah, it was removed. And I kind of think along similar lines to Stella that this is a capital programme, and actually this portfolio is that's part of what your remit is. So it's deliberately not badged as a departmental recommendation. This is the way the authority will be moving increasingly. Adult care just are in the vanguard at the moment, and I think a lot of the other services are looking to see how successfully that rolls out in terms of what they can then do themselves within their own directorates for very different clienteles.
If it's been removed from the adult care recommendations, then there'll be no duplication if this group puts it forward.
Agree, Fiona. Yep. Adrian, where's Adrian?
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you, Stella. Just a suggestion that maybe the order of these three might be helped if the first two were switched around.
You mean the budgetary first and
Yeah.
technology second?
Yeah, it seems to be
Yeah,
a bigger
that-
issue
that
and
could
more
give
people.
more-
There's not a hierarchy.
That could
No, but
give
it's-
more.
Yeah.
Adrian, I just wanted to just double check because the other members of the council are invited to observe all of the portfolios that they might be interested in. I wasn't sure whether you were part of this evidence gathering group.
Not this
No,
particular
actually,
one,
I
not
was-
resources and performance. He was
I
the
was
previous
in.
one.
I was in SEG. I
So
was in
the-
SEG.
so
I just thought I'd make what I thought was a helpful suggestion.
Okay, so if the group want to change them, that but I'm just conscious that
I think Adrian makes a really good point. On behalf of this group, on behalf of me in this group,
so if
I
Adrian
think
would
that's a
like
good
to,
point. Yes.
could you repeat what the order you wanted, Adrian?
Go from 1, 2, 3 to 2, 1, 3. Does that help? Switch the top two around.
Yeah, I just made the point. We don't normally have a hierarchy of recommendations, but presentation can be important.
And
That's the way
I
it
can't
reads.
change it. I can't change it in real time, Adrian. So I've noted what you've said, so I can make that amendment later.
Thank you.
Also, Natalie, David, these recommendations are not in order of preference, are they? No particular order. Are that one is surely as relevant as the next and the
Exactly.
next?
Yes.
Yes. So
Yeah, there is
whether
no
it becomes
hierarchy as
one,
such. Yeah.
if you had said to say put your favourite at the top, then and then the last, then maybe. But I feel that all have equal weight.
Exactly.
But thank you. He's gone off screen. Bless him. Adrian, thank you, Adrian.
Apologies, I'm going to need to duck out in a minute.
I think we're nearly there. Are we here? Are we there?
We are pretty much there.
Based on Natalie's going to review and update, and final wording will come through, and we can absolutely go through it, fine tooth comb it before submitting.
Good.
Indeed, but it is important. We've found over the years that it's vitally important that everybody gets to grips with the recommendations here now while it's fresh in our mind, because in the past, under different regimes, we would end up with recommendation creep if we didn't really start to nail it down at this stage. So thank you so much for your commitment to that. And I think we're pretty much there.
Thank you, everyone.
To thank everybody for their
Ian,
attention.
thank you, Ian, so much.
Yeah, thank you. Lovely. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Thanks a lot,
Sally,
everyone.
Tim,
Thanks.
thank you, Fiona, David, everyone.
Thanks,
Jonathan.
And we can look forward to doing it all again next year.
Can't wait. Right, see you folks. Bye.